and go through various articles that are there, right? So, like, I can look into the question of breakfast. Um, Breakfast meals at school have been improving food security levels of children. Let me search this. So it's for a proper search, we must look into Google Scholar instead of only Google's, because it will give Google Scholar will give various kind of papers list. Some peer-reviewed articles will be more in Google Scholar search. So I get, let's say, this paper. I try to open this. Okay. This is hidden behind a paywall. So maybe let me open this one. Yeah. So it is open, right? Now, how I can use AI to understand this paper, right? So, like, I can just make a new chat and just write in it, summarize the paper. The paper open in current window. So it has summarized it. So how I opened this Copilot, I just clicked in this chat button and just below the close button, and it started showing me the key findings, the key methodology that it has used, right? What is the summary of the paper? Alternatively, I can use chat PDF also. I can install its extension to understand like how I to interact with several papers, right? So Microsoft Copilot in Word can be used for existing writing tools. Then Google Docs with Gemini. So brainstorming and collaborative revision. I think this is very simple. Like yesterday we went to Google Colab. Similarly, we can do for Google Docs also. But then Gemini will be we will be interacting with Gemini there. Gemini is an AI which Google developed. So we will be interacting with it in that way. And we'll keep an outline, evidence matrix, and counter arguments together in one document. So this is the process of writing it. Like we read the papers through, let's say, Copilot or Chat PDF. Then we go to Google Docs and take help of Gemini to write it or Grammarly to write it. And then we also keep a handy evidence matrix which will have the thesis, the counter arguments, and the supporting arguments, right? So, and we use Grammarly to improve clarity. So, whenever we need any such, we need to support our writing or defend our writing, we can take claims from our evidence matrix. Okay. So these are some example, like building your foundation. How can we build our foundation when it comes to AI assisted writing, right? So we can pick the strongest thesis and draft a structured outline and create an evidence matrix using research AI. So this is a potential thesis like government should promote plant-based diets to reduce chronic disease. So what are the pros in it? Strong evidence linking plant-based diets to lower strong evidence linking plant-based diets to lower heart disease or diabetes risk. Risk of oversimplifying. Not all plant-based diets are healthy. For example, processed vegan junk food. So we are telling, so this is the con of it. Like pro is the argument supporting it, and con is the argument, counter argument. So plant-based, so this is another thesis. Plant-based diet should be voluntary, not policy driven. Then what are the pros and cons? And similarly, the third point. So what we do, we pick the strongest thesis and draft a structured outline around it. Like, let's say we brainstormed and came up with these three theses, we will pick the strongest one. So, what is the strongest one? Obesity or chronic disease burden. So, nutritional evidence for plant based diets is the argument one in support of it. Successful case studies like school lunch reforms or midday meals. These are the argument two. And then you put counter argument and rebuttal of the counter argument. And then you make policy recommendation. Right? So, like we can cite some very good sources in support of our arguments that come from the strongest thesis, and then we look at counter evidence also, right? So rather than just mentioning the objections, yeah, so like when we are talking about plant-based diets are healthier, right? And there are two counter arguments that plant-based diets can lack B12 and iron without proper planning. Cultural food traditions relying on meat make policy shifts difficult. So we should also consider these two counter arguments in our writing. And rather than just mentioning these objections, we respond by saying that we should cite for B12 or iron, we should cite fortified food programs and supplementation guidelines used successfully in other countries. And we should pinpoint to flexible policy models like plant forward rather than plant only models. Right, so this is how we counter argue. So you ask it, so now when you have drafted it, right, when you have got the claims from side or consensus in support of it and against it, and when you ask AI to evaluate our draft, you can ask, you can enter this draft into a system that can evaluate your draft. So validity meaning thesis is well supported or not. Logical fallacy. One paragraph assumes correlation equal to causation in the NYC pollen data. What does it mean? That there is one NYC pilot data that school plant-based lunch pilots reduced obesity. Okay, so if we are citing it, it is actually a correlation, and like somebody can say, some scientists, scholars can say that this is a correlation, not a causation. Like when we are saying that school-based plant lunch pilots they reduce obesity, that means if there is no causation in it, there is just a correlation that their obesity reduced when they consume plant-based lunch pilots or diets, right? So this is not like one thing is causing another, just one thing and the obesity reduction is correlated. That's what it is saying. Like if one moves in one direction, the other also moves in the same direction. So both reduce. Like one increases, the other will reduce, right? Negative correlation. So it's just pointing that out. So what we do, we just when we go through each and every sentence or even use AI, the AI will give us this kind of result, and then we can check our claim, and instead of cause like plant-based diets they cause lower obesity, we can say that plant-based diets are associated with lower obesity, and we can simplify the B12 rebuttal paragraph. Okay, I hope this is making sense so far. Let me check whether there is any question in the chat or not. Okay, if we ask some AI platforms for research papers, they provide some references. However, when we try to read or search for those papers, we are unable to find them. What should we do in that case? Yeah, so those references, either it is just hallucinating. So sometimes AI also hallucinates with when it comes to references, right? So we need to manually check that. Or we can search on Google Scholar and then we can find it, like whether that thing exists or not, whether that article exists or not. And the most important thing here is we can ask AI for its DOI. If AI returns a activated DOI, that means it is good enough to be cited, and if that claim is there in that paper, right? But sometimes due to the use of AI and hallucination of references. So hallucination means that some very like AI is hallucinating, meaning that AI is actually creating some text which is not actually there. So AI can actually hallucinate some references also, which were earlier not there. So like ChatGPT, some version of ChatGPT has very this probability of making um, hallucinated references, but then we can also write in the prompt, do not make any hallucinations, right? This will also stop it in to some extent, stop the AI to some extent of for not using any hallucinations. The other thing is we can use a better AI tool like Cloud, CLAUDE, for writing papers. It will give a better results. And if you have a paid version of it, it will be good also. Yeah. Okay, I'm getting a query. Professor usually refute the idea of uploading draft document on AI platform cause of plagiarism issue. How to deal with AI hallucination wants to extract p-value data from tables with the paper. Just please allow me to address these two queries later. Let me just finish some part of the thing which is needs to be addressed. I'll come back to it later. So, yeah. So we're here. Run plagiarism and logic checks before finalizing. So verify quotes and fix references. Right? So we must run plagiarism check and logic checks before we finalize any article. And how we can write, so we can give LLM, large language model, an argument prompt like breakdown by thesis. Like ultra processed foods should be regulated like tobacco into main reasons, supporting evidence, counter arguments, and rebuttals. Right? So basically, what we are trying to do is we are trying to write an article on UPFs, ultra processed foods, and they should be regulated like tobacco. Let's say this is our topic. What idea, what prompt we can give for the same to LLM so that it writes, mentions the reasons, supporting evidence, counter arguments, as well as rebuttals, right? So main reason is, so AI will give you the reasons and counter argument also, right? Like the reason like UPS drive obesity or diabetes, evidence, NOVA classification studies, they also support it with evidence, right? So evidence first prompting and fallacy scanning, like anyone who defends the food industry is just paid by big food, right? So we must not make such kind of statements in when we write, because such kind of statements AI can sometimes generate such statements which is like attacking the unethical basically, so we should not delve into such statements. um common AI writing risks and mitigation. So this actually relates to your question also. Like instead of trusting an AI's claim that a 2021 WHO report found X, you run the same query through consensus or perplexity, find the actual report and check its DOI before citing it. Okay, I think this answers your question pretty well. Because, in case of AI writing risks and mitigation, this is the problem that people usually find, that AI will make a claim and say that such and so thing is going to was found, right? So if we do a query of consensus, so I just showed you consensus and perplexity is also there, or site is also there, SCITE. Yeah. So we can actually check for the references on these sites, and then we also need to check its DOI before citing it. Overconfident claims like UPFs cause obesity, and the other says UPFs are associated with obesity, right? So this discrepancy tells you to hedge your own claim. Like you can always not make a causation related statement. So you should, when you browse through AI made document, we actually need to surf through this overconfident claims. Like if there is any overconfident claim or not, right? Then what are some of the hidden bias? Critique this argument. You draft your document with GPT-4o, then ask Claude, critique this argument for any pro-industry or anti-industry bias I may have missed. Okay, so you have used Chat GPT for making this document, but you're putting it in Claude and then critiquing the argument for any pro-industry or anti-industry bias that you have would have missed, right? Like it should not have any hidden bias also. So before finalizing the claim that you are actually claiming, you require at least two primary peer-reviewed sources supporting it, not just their summaries or news articles. Privacy risk: if your paper draws in unpublished internal hospital nutrition data, you avoid pasting the confidential patient data into ChatGPT or Claude's free consumer app, and instead use a provider with enterprise privacy settings. Yeah, this is very important. Like for privacy risk, sometimes we just enter our unpublished data into it. For that, we can either use Google Colab because the data will stay in its environment only, or we can use ChatGPT or Claude. Paid versions basically, so that it doesn't use that data, right? So these are some of the tools that I have mentioned here that can be used for, I think there are many queries. So let me just quickly go through this. So these are the activities that could be done if you want to explore like how different kind of AIs react when you give the same prompt to different AI systems, right? So yeah, so this is an activity that we all can do. So this is an AI generated text, and please read the above text and let me know what are the bias, misinformation, lack of transparency, manipulation given if there is any such manipulation and bias associated with this text. So I'll read it for you, read this text for you. According to the latest AI healthcare algorithm, ICU beds should be prioritized for younger patients during resource shortages. Data shows that younger patients have a 47% higher recovery rate and shorter average hospital stays, allowing beds to be freed up faster. This decision is based on millions of electronic health records ensuring maximum efficiency in medical resource utilization. Okay, so can anybody just write what is the basic flaw in this? Write in the chat, please, if anybody can find out the basic flaw in this AI generated text. Yes, that is also one of the point. There is no reference given. Any other point that you see in this text? Very good, Shavani. Yes, there's a bias for younger generation, which is unethical. Younger patients, which is unethical. And is there any particular thing that you find which is also which may have been missed so far? Okay, let me reveal the answers now. So the bias is the algorithm implicitly favors younger patients, reflecting a bias in training data that values efficiency over equitable care, lack of transparency. So efficiency over equitable care. Right, so it is looking at higher recovery rate, which is a symbol of or a sign of efficiency, and it is not looking at equitable care like older patients should be also taken care of in the same way that younger patients should be taken care. Okay, lack of transparency does not define recovery rate, right? This is a very important point in critical reading. Like it should actually tell you what is the recovery rate. Does it include long-term complications or not? Right. So, higher recovery rate for which diseases, for which kind of disorders, or which kind of geographical geographical location, like in which geography younger patients have this much of high recovery rate. Nothing like that is mentioned, and this is actually a generalization based on very few, um, very few studies. Maybe it could be very few, it could be many, but this is a generalization which is not, which is very unethical, right? So it uses utilitarian language, efficiency maximization to justify discriminatory policies, right? So, and yes, Akansha ma'am has said the data source is not mentioned, which is right. So, data source is not mentioned, the geography, the context, the kind of diseases, no details are mentioned in this. So, there is no balancing between arguments and counter arguments. So, that is why it is a flawed thing. Yeah. So, yeah, now let me just look at some of the questions. So usually refute the idea of uploading draft document on AI platform cause of plagiarism issue, and how to deal with AI hallucination when one wants to extract p-value and data from tables within paper. Okay, this is a very good question actually. So whenever we are uploading any document, so there are softwares like Turnitin. I'll just mention it in chat, turn it in. So when we upload any document or turn it in for plagiarism checking, like for the similarity report or AI plagiarism, then there is an option that whether you want to add the paper you are uploading in its repository or not, right? If you do not want to add the paper to its repository, then you can just mention that you can just check that box. And then when you again work on the paper, when it shows plagiarism, and when you re-upload it and turn it in, it will not show you the 100% plagiarism or similar high level of plagiarism, because it was not uploaded in any repository, right? And the other part of question is how to deal with AI hallucination when one wants to extract p-value data from tables within paper. So one tool that I find really useful though for this purpose is anti-Google, anti-gravity. So the first step in this case would be to download all the papers with p-values, with data from tables within the paper, right? Sorry, just download all the papers, upload it on and Google Anti-Gravity, and give it a prompt to extract p-value and data from tables within paper. So it will extract all the p-values and data from tables in that paper, and it is free to use also to some extent, right? So that is about this question. Then what is LLM score? So I'm not sure whether it is related to tokenization exactly or not, but I'll look into it and I'll get back to you. So many references are not there. How can we check? So many references are not there in the, I guess you mean like in the article that we produce using AI, right? Many references are not there. So we actually went through a slide where we checked, like we can use consensus or cite to see whether the arguments that are made in our paper, right, whether these references really exist or not. And then we can also check its DOI. From its DOI, we can ask the same AI to give us the DOI of the paper. And then through DOI, we can check whether this paper really exists or not.